Students, welcome back. We're talking about business presentations. So in this opening slide, you see an animated GIF of Kristen Wiig, Saturday Night Live. She's getting up and as a student and delivering a presentation, and she's clearly excited. But for many of us, we're not excited when it comes to getting up and giving presentations. Why? Because we're afraid of getting judged, afraid of making a mistake. And it's natural for us to be nervous because it's not natural for us to get up in front of a bunch of people, have them all stare at us, and expect to be calm. Our bodies have a fight or flight syndrome, and it's natural for us to ramp up with adrenaline and assume that a bunch of people staring at me, they must want to hurt me, okay? So here's a little tip that I do whenever I have to get up and give a presentation. When my body has those natural physiological responses of being nervous, which there's symptoms like dry mouth and elevated heart rate and breathing fast and shallow, we attribute those symptoms to being nervous. When in fact, our body's just ramping up for a situation. It's giving us a bunch of adrenaline, and we're having that physiological response. But rather than tell ourselves that we're nervous, why not tell ourselves that we're excited? Because when we're excited, we're empowered, and we're ramping up for something that we want to do, like we're about to go down a giant crazy roller coaster, or we're leaning in to kiss somebody that we've wanted to kiss for a long time. In both those situations, we have the same physiological response, but we're excited about what's about to happen. So when it comes to presentations, let's tell ourselves that we're excited about this presentation and not do all of the mind chatter that takes us out of the possibility of being excited. The next couple of slides are going to show you some different in front of other people common presentation settings, and I want you to look for any possible suggestions for improvement. Another way of looking at it, are they doing anything wrong in those presentations? You know, the number one fear, greater than death itself, is public speaking. People oftentimes don't like to do it. In business, however, it is critical that you get comfortable getting up in front of people and presenting your ideas. Whether you're managing a department or making a presentation on behalf of the company or doing training for the company, if you want to advance your business career, probably the most important skill that you can develop is getting up in front of people and presenting your ideas. So you might think I get nervous when I speak. I'm not a good speaker. Let's put all that aside for now, and let's start with embracing the fact that this is a skill that I know is important to the advancement of my career, and therefore I'm going to lean into this and learn the skills that I need to get better. So I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to give you some specific tips and techniques. And getting good at speaking in front of people is much like any other task. It's a time on task skill, meaning the more you do it, the more likely you're going to get better at it. And there will come a point where you'll get over the threshold of fear and anxiety, and you'll actually enjoy getting up and speaking in front of people. There's times when I still get nervous as well. But once we know the tools and the tricks, we quickly move into being excited about our presentation. So before we look at the following slides, you want to remember this simple point. When you're getting up to present to people, short presentation, long presentation, formal, informal, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the content that you want to convey to your audience. So get off of the position of, I wonder what people are thinking of me. I look stupid. I sound stupid. Get off of all of that ego-based self-analysis and just get excited about the material that you want to convey to your audience. The more excited and interested you are in the material that you want to convey, then the less you'll be concerned about yourself. If you've ever been in a situation where it's an emergency and you have to communicate with somebody, maybe you're in a foreign country and you don't speak the language, you're going to revert to some basic nonverbals, but you are so highly motivated in that emergency situation Maybe you're stranded. Maybe you've lost all your money and you were robbed or something and you're trying to get some help. You are so motivated to communicate with somebody that you will throw out all of your pretenses about appearance. You will be humble. You'll do whatever it takes. You'll point, you'll gesture, because that communication needs to happen. So presenting is not that different. You just need to get excited about the material that you want to convey and know that it's important to get it across to your audience. Enthusiastic deliveries get enthusiastic responses, meaning if you're excited and interested in your material that you have to present, then your audience is going to be interested and excited to listen to you present that information. So with that being said, the next series of slides, you're going to look at some common presentation mistakes. Look at each scenario and jot down what you think is the mistake that the presenters are making. Let's look at a few business presentation scenarios and see if we can critique these from anything that they're doing wrong. So you have this first presentation here. Take a look at this. Go ahead and pause me talking for a minute and evaluate what you think the speakers are doing wrong in this presentation. Pause now. Okay, so hopefully you identified that the presenters are presenting to the screen. They're not looking at the audience at all. So you want to connect with the audience. You don't want to turn to the screen and read your slides. Common mistake in presentations. Let's look at another scenario. Here's a group presentation. What is this group doing wrong with their presentation? Pause the video here. Well, what you probably noticed is their body language is a little off. So we have somebody with crossed arms. We have people with their hands behind their arms. You want to try to have your arms help you with conversing. If it's not natural for you to use those, and you can just have your arms down, in a box format in front of you. We see another presenter with his hands in his pockets, and you want to try to avoid that. Our body language communicates more to the audience than the words that are coming out of our mouths. So we want to really manage our what we call nonverbals in our presentations. Let's look at one more example. Look at these four ladies, and what do you see wrong with their presentation style? Take a minute, pause the video here. So we don't see any actual slides, which is okay. But we see them all clutching their notes, and for your presentations, you want to try to get off notes as much as possible, and your presentation slides will be your notes. So we're delivering our presentations extemporaneously, meaning we're not reading a bunch of notes, we're not relying heavily on notes in the presentation. We want to try to walk away from notes as much as possible, and the slides are there as an outline to help us and serve as our notes. Let's look at one more example. So look at these four ladies here. What's going wrong with this presentation? Go ahead and pause here. So with this group, they're standing in front of the screen. We assume they might just be taking a group photo after their presentation, but they're standing in front of the screen. You don't want to do this. And they also have a presentation slide that looks like a wall of words. There's a bunch of text. It's basically like a Word document presented on screen. And that's the worst way to use PowerPoint. We're going to go for the 3 and 3 rule, no more than 3 bullet points per slide and no more than 3 words per bullet point. So your slides are meant to be outlines, and instead of a bunch of words, you're going to talk about the information that you want the audience to know. You don't need to read it all and have it all stuffed on your slides. And you want to use pictures and graphics on your PowerPoint to tell the story, and then you fill in and add to those graphics and visuals with your commentary. You don't need to put everything you need to say up on your slides, and in fact, you want to try to avoid that. We'll get into that more later. Let's look at one more. Go ahead and pause the video. What's going on with this presentation? So this is a good example. You can probably tell it's a stock photography, but she's looking at the audience, she's engaged, she's writing things on her flip chart, they look engaged. We've got high visuals. So this is a good, engaging business presentation. Again, these are scenarios, but you get the idea here. We want to connect with the audience first and foremost. So we have to manage our body language, be aware of how we're standing and how we're connecting with the audience. And this is key. So here's our 5 outcomes. I'm not going to read all of these, but please take a moment, pause the video here, read through these. Item 4, I'm going to work on helping you guys develop your confidence for your presentations, how to use visuals correctly, item 3, know the 3 parts of a presentation, item 2, your opening, your middle, and your close. Item 5, how to do other types of presentations like distance presentations, webcasts, etc., and some tactics you want to use there. And item 1, really the second half there of that outcome, how to understand what are the audience's needs that I'm trying to meet with this presentation. Okay, here's your terms for chapter 12. The ones in bold are the ones that you should definitely focus on primarily to make sure you have those for quiz purposes. Ding, ding. So as I'm lecturing, jot these down and you can cross-reference your textbook to make sure you're understanding these terms. All right, you should know the 4 different types of presentation methods. These are also in your book. So we have the 4 types going from top to bottom here of memorized, manuscript, impromptu, and extemporaneous. So please look at the difference as far as the description for each of those 4 types. The type that we're going to be working on for your presentation is the 4th type, where the speaker plans, prepares, and rehearses, but doesn't write everything down. You're not delivering a scripted, memorized, written directly from a script speech. Business presentations are delivered extemporaneously, which means like you're having a conversation with your audience. There just happens to be more than one person. So you have your slides in a business presentation, not for the one you're doing, and those kind of serve as your outline to follow along as you go. But you're not literally stuffing every word that you want to cover on your slides. Your presentation, you're not doing slides, you're just talking directly into the camera like I am right now. So we're going for an extemporaneous delivery style. Under the Mind Tools link, you'll see some common presentation mistakes. The number 1 mistake, not preparing enough. Can't stress it enough that you need to prepare for your presentation. Practice. How do you practice a presentation? You practice it by presenting it. You don't practice it by reading it, because what will happen if you just read your notes and read your presentation over and over again? When it comes time for you to present, you're going to get up there, you're going to stand up, you're going to start presenting, and you're going to forget where you're at. And you're going to quickly turn to your notes and you're going to read the rest of your presentation. And that's because you practiced it that way. Instead, you want to practice presenting to the audience with no notes. You will present as you have practiced your presentation. So make sure you practice, and you practice delivering it live without any notes. Other mistakes, again, you're not doing any slides for your web camera presentation, but if you were, you wouldn't want to commit the mistake of having too much text on your slides, try to cover too much information to where your presentation feels rushed. So you want a nice, gentle pace to your presentation where you can have some vocal variety and you're not just dumping a whole bunch of information onto the audience and having it feel rushed. You want to try to maintain eye contact. Here you're talking to a camera, but pretend like you're speaking to somebody. And you want to have good energy, what we call, you want to be dynamic. So enthusiastic deliveries get enthusiastic responses. So pump up the energy, and your audience will have more energy and enthusiasm for your presentation. Those are 4 of the common presentation mistakes. There's others that are listed in that link, so please do check out that link above and look for other common mistakes. Okay, your next 2 slides, this slide 13 and the next slide, slide 14, have some embedded videos. In the YouTube lecture that you're watching right now, you won't be able to open these links. Instead, again, you're going to need to go to the resource page and you'll see the links to those videos here. These are short. I definitely want you to watch these videos. You have Simon Sinek on this side talking about how to deliver a TED Talk. You have powerful presentations with how to develop your presentation in a storytelling format. So please go to the resource page and watch these 2 short videos. As we work to prepare a presentation, we want to follow these 4 steps. We need to know, what's the purpose of this presentation? Am I trying to sell? am I trying to train? What am I trying to do with the audience? What's their walkaway that I want them to have? What's the main points that I want to make? All right, gang, so a continuation on a discussion of your recorded presentation assignment. You're trying to hit between 5 and 6 minutes on your presentation. There's a rubric that is attached to that assignment that you can review that explains how I grade this assignment. So you want to be within that sweet spot of 5 to 6 minutes, and look for the other rubric items there that detail how to do this recording successfully. You want to identify your major points, which is your criteria points that you use to evaluate the schools and which school won for each of your criteria points. Item 3 is the most important consideration when you're putting together a business presentation. You got to open strong and you got to close strong. So there's two pieces where an audience tunes in to listen to a speaker. Right at the beginning, are you going to be interesting? And if not, they tune out and they check back in again when you're wrapping up. Are you done? Other than that, they oftentimes tune out, unless you grab them right at the front with a really good presentation. So you want a strong opening and closing to your presentation, and you want to have a proper introduction. If you're getting up in front of people and presenting, usually somebody introduces you in advance, and they talk about your credentials and everything and why you're qualified to speak on this topic. If not, you might want to do a quick introduction of yourself. Not necessary for your recorded web video of your recap of your research findings. Step 1 is know your audience. So it's very important that you know who you're going to be presenting to. What is their level of understanding and education regarding your topic? What are the challenges that your audience is facing that hopefully you can tie your presentation into so that they're going to have interest? In other words, why is it important to the audience? What is the environment in which you're presenting? Is it a large conference room? Are you on a stage? Are you going to be mic'd? Where's the AV equipment? Where are you going to stand? How much time do you have? Where is your audience going to be sitting? All of that, knowing that in advance, reduces your anxiety. So you're not walking in there cold into a situation that you're not really prepared for. When I used to work as a regional marketing manager for Jack in the Box, I would travel all through Southern California, driving around all over here and there, and I would present to each district, which was somewhere between 20 to 40 restaurants in a district, and all those restaurant managers would get together about once every 2 months, and I was the regional marketing manager. I'd come out and talk about, here's how we can improve your sales in this district, here's some tactics, and also here's what we're doing corporately, chain-wide, as far as our next rollout of new products and promotions and how you can help us execute these items. Most of my audience were English as a second language speakers, so their primary language was Spanish. And I speak some Spanish, un poco. And I'm also aware that I am a white male with an MBA, and I want to adjust my presentation accordingly to the audience that I'm presenting to. So I used to type up my presentations and then translate them in one of the translation software into Spanish, and then I would read them out loud, and I had some Spanish speakers in our regional office, and I would present it to them, and they would correct me on where my pronunciations and stuff were off. I wouldn't do the entire presentation in Spanish because Spanish is not my native tongue and I'm rusty on it, but I would do maybe the opening 5 minutes and have some good attention getters and to hook the audience in. So they always appreciated that I was attempting to meet them in the language that was most comfortable for them. So, and that doesn't work for every scenario, but you want to try to meet the audience where they're at. My girlfriend is traveling right now doing a presentation in Savannah, Georgia, and she trains companies on sales and recruiting. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because she forgot to get the book. The owner of the company had written a book about their company, and she forgot to bring the book, so she was in a panic and needed me to FedEx it out to her so she could read the book and understand the company and what they were about, so she could shape her presentation accordingly to that business's specific needs. So can't stress enough that you need to know your audience and tweak your presentation specifically for that audience. That goes a long way towards building rapport with your audience. So once you know your audience, then you want to identify what's the purpose of this presentation. Am I trying to inspire them? Am I trying to train them on something, educate them? What is my walk-away piece? And it needs to be simple. What's the purpose of this presentation? And that's the walk-away piece. So it's a single thought, and you'll open with something that's going to lead to that thought oftentimes, and you'll close again and tie it back in to that thought. So you can look up that book, Do's and Taboos of Public Speaking, so you have an achievable purpose of the presentation. On a side note, whenever I ran a meeting at Jack in the Box, and I had lots of meetings with lots of people in those meetings, we were a self-managed, cross-functional team of people representing the company, I would always start each meeting, all right, thanks everybody for being here. The purpose of today's meeting is, and whatever was the most important thing that we had to discuss and get resolved, I would say that up front so the members and attendees of that meeting knew here's what we're actually supposed to be accomplishing in this meeting. When you're going to do a presentation, you want to have that same internal discussion, not to the audience. The purpose of my presentation is, you could say that, but it's really what's the purpose that you're trying to accomplish with your presentation. For your presentation in week 16, you're recapping your findings from your analytical report project where you're evaluating 3 schools and making a recommendation as to which one's the best to attend for an MBA program. So your presentation, 5 to 6 minute presentation, recorded, webcam style, should highlight which schools won each of the criteria points and sell the audience on your recommendation as to which school is the best to attend for an MBA program. Sell the audience on which school is the best to attend for an MBA program based on your analysis. That's your purpose. Once you have a purpose and you know who your audience is, then you just got to organize your content to move the audience through your content. We're going to follow the AIDA format, which is attention, interest, desire, and action. So first you have to get the audience's attention. You can't sell them or motivate them or train them on anything until you have their attention. Then you got to get them interested in your material. You got to get some kind of desire that they want to purchase or buy into whatever you're trying to sell. And then oftentimes there's a call to action if you're actually selling product to get them to take action and take the purchase. All right, so we know the two most important parts of a presentation are the opening and the closing. In the opening, we want to get the audience's attention. And there's many ways that you can do that. You see those listed here. On the second to last bullet point, where I've underlined appropriate humor, I would exercise extreme caution in using humor as an opener, unless you know that the entire audience is going to think it's funny and it's not going to be offensive to anybody, and you know the audience specifically well, that humor is going to resonate with them. If you don't know that for sure, I would not use a humor opening because it'll fall flat and then your presentation is just going to get worse from there. The goal of your introduction is to establish rapport. I like asking a question. How many of you ever had a problem with X, Y, or Z? Well, let me explain in my presentation how you can solve this problem. So you can ask a question, you can have a shocking statement. Did you know that 50% of the children living in the United States live below the poverty line and only have 1 meal a day? That would be a shocking statement, right? So something to get the audience hooked in. The really good speakers can actually develop these on the fly, so they might be sitting there waiting to get introduced, and they're introduced, and they mention something about the town that they're presenting in. Boy, the last time I was here in Philadelphia, you guys sure love your cheesesteak, something to get, just getting the audience involved. But I like to ask a question that relates to the topic that I'm trying to present. How many of you would like to graduate in 4 years from school and have a job that's guaranteed 6 figures? Raise your hands if that's for you. Well, in my presentation, I'm going to talk about the best school to attend for an MBA, where you're going to be guaranteed to have a 6-figure income upon graduation. Asked a question, you got the audience's attention, right? So our first of 3 parts is the opener. We've got their attention, and then we move into the body. So this is where we're actually going to walk through and build our case for what we want the audience to believe or what we're trying to sell them on. Your assignment, again, is to present your research findings on the schools that you evaluated in your analytic report and make a recommendation as to which one's the best to attend for an MBA. So your body of your presentation is going to compare the schools by criteria point, explain who won, and that analysis and that criteria analysis is going to lead towards your final recommendation. So you can see the bullet points here of you want to do your criteria analysis in criteria order, explain how a school won on each criteria point, what data you compared to determine who won, how a school wins, and why a school won for that criteria point. Step 3, we get to the closing. So in the closing, in the opening, we want to get their attention and be more playful and kind of tell an interesting story, grab their attention. In the closing, we want a little more gravitas. Now we're coming in with a strong, confident recommendation at the end. So for your recorded presentation, you want to recap who won each criteria point. And we're following the T3 structure. What is the T3 structure? In the T3 structure, at the beginning of your presentation, all right, so I'm going to be comparing 3 schools for attending an MBA and making a recommendation as to which one's the best. So that's the telling them up front what you're going to talk about. That's the first of 3 T's. Your second T is now tell them in more detail. All right, so let's go through each of our criteria points. Our first criteria point is cost. School A, School B, School C. Here the winner is, you can see, is School C. Caliber, School A, School B, School C. The winner is blankety blank. So that's in the body of your presentation. In the closing, now let me wrap it all up. So to recap one more time, here's how the schools fared on our criteria points. When it came to cost, Cal State San Marcos had the lowest in-state cost. When it came to caliber, UCSD had the highest postgraduate MBA salary. When it came to accessibility, San Diego State University had the lowest entrance requirements of the 3 schools. So you're going to recap the winner for each criteria point. You're going to tie it all back to your opening. So again, I asked at the beginning, who wanted to make 6 figures finishing school? My recommendation is the best school to achieve this would be whatever your school is, and that's your final recommendation. Normally, if you were delivering this presentation live, you're delivering it to a video camera because we're in an online course, you would open it up for questions and you would model the question behavior. So you're not doing that, but I want to explain to you how to do that because you still should know how to do this skill. Once you've completed your presentation, you should be aware of the length you have for your presentation, and you should be signaling that you're wrapping it up. All right, now that we've talked about some of the structure for organizing your presentation, knowing the audience, knowing what your goal is, how you're going to open, how you're going to close, how are you going to deliver your presentation? What type of visuals are you going to use? It doesn't always have to be a projected presentation. Certainly multimedia, where we're using PowerPoint or Google Slides, is the most common in business, but there's other options. You might be traveling and have to rely on a whiteboard or even a flip chart. And sometimes when it's more of an informal or brainstorming session, you might want to use these options. And we do this in the classroom from time to time. There can be still projection, rare to still use these, but that would be sometimes just acetone slides that are put down on a projector and done. Those are just black and white. So certainly multimedia is the most common, whether that's projected in a room with folks watching, or whether it's recorded like you have now, or whether it's a webcast. The multimedia format is the most common, but doesn't always have to be that format. The last option, hard copy, if you're traveling, it is always a good idea to have a backup plan for your digital/multimedia presentation. Audiovisual equipment does fail from time to time. And if you're traveling and you're presenting in a large conference room or on a stage and your AV isn't working, you're toast. It's the worst. And when it comes to public speaking, the show must go on. You have to have some type of backup plan. So if you were delivering this presentation in the classroom and the AV didn't work, or your presentation crashed because you had too big of a picture file or something wasn't condensed, I would still expect you to do that presentation. So hard copies can be a nice safety, that you have a backup plan, that you could hand out hard copies in the event that your presentation didn't work. However, what you would not want to do, is have your presentation projected on a screen and then also provide handouts of those same slides. Why not, Nate? That sounds like that's actually helpful for the audience. They can follow along and take notes. True. However, when you provide handouts to your audience, in one respect, you're giving them ammo, because now they can look ahead and see what's coming up on next slides. It's better for them to ask skeptical questions. You've kind of given them some ammo. And also, more commonly, what happens is they just start reading your handouts and they stop paying attention to you presenting. And that's not the intent of a presentation. The intent of a presentation is for you to magnify and electrify and animate and motivate your audience with your dynamic presentation. If you give them handouts of your presentation, then they've kind of lost the need for you and they lose interest in the speaker. So there's a time and a place for hard copy handouts. Typically, they're what we call leave-behinds. After the presentation, you can give them some of that stuff. Sometimes in a company setting, they might ask for hard copies of the presentation as part of your presentation. But I prefer to not supply hard copies during the presentation. All right, so now let's talk about actually designing your slides. I'm going to use the term PowerPoint, but whether you're doing Google Slides or Slide Rocket, or there's a variety of slide making tools, presentation software that you can use. You want to limit the number of visual components that are on your slides. So you want to try to keep it clean. You see I've got 3 bullet points here. You see that I'm not following my 3 and 3 rule. So these are kind of publisher slides that I've augmented and tweaked and pared down. You want to have high contrast. Here we see black text on a white background. That's very easy for pretty much all audience members to read. You wouldn't want a light blue background with a light teal text, right, where the audience is straining. What if they're colorblind? They're not going to be able to see it. So your slide content should be limited to just a few bullet points. There's lots of excellent templates regardless of what format you're using. You can just look for business presentation templates. You can Google search that for whatever software format you're using, and you'll come up with several of these. Keep your headlines consistent. You can see my headline is initial cap, meaning it's not all caps. So it should be just initial caps, guidelines to design presentation visuals. Just the first letter of the word is caps and the rest of it is lowercase. That's called initial caps. That's easier for the eye to read. So don't jam your slides with too much stuff. You don't want to have too many font colors, typically 2, 3 font colors max, and background colors count, so you really don't want more than 3 colors on your slides. You want to proofread your visuals carefully, assume something is wrong, you just need to find it. So typos are really reduce your credibility in a presentation. Again, there's templates all over the internet, and cool colors are used for formal presentations, warm colors like your browns and your comfort colors for less formal. There's plenty of templates, again, online that you can choose from. So when we talk about slide design, find a template that you like. Don't pack it with too much stuff. It's really that simple. Here we see an ineffective slide design. We see a blue background, we see red font, and we see black text. Okay, well, that is keeping to the 3 colors, but we see that the text, there's a lot of text. They're writing in full sentences in their bullet points, and you really just want outline format, and you're going to talk about the extra points. The red against blue is straining to the eye, so that's not good. And the headline says compelling stories enhance. Only the C, the first letter of the first word, compelling, capital C, is initial cap, and then the rest is all lowercase. You would want each word of this title, the first letter of each word should be capitalized, initial caps, to make it easier to read. And you've got a kind of cheesy clip art graphic there that looks a little juvenile. Here's a better version of that same slide. So we see value of storytelling. See how the V and the S in storytelling is initial caps. Those transition phrases like of and the don't need to be capitalized, initial caps. We've got a nice compelling visual. It's not a clip art. It's not as juvenile. It's a nice high quality image. And we've got shorter bullet points, easier to read text, black on white text with nice borders for the separation between the title and the bullet points. Much cleaner slide, right? Okay, so now we have some beautifully designed slides, and now we need to focus on our voice, our delivery of our material, what we call vocal qualities. So when we talk about vocal qualities, phonation, pitch, volume, and rate all go together. And the best way to really understand the quality of your voice is to record it and listen to it. Now that can be a painful experience to listen to your own voice. Is that what I sound like? And I've certainly had that experience. Some common problems that people have with their vocal delivery. Number one, and this is primarily with men, is that we have a monotone delivery style. Every word sounds just like the other word, and there's no variety in the rate of our speech or the pitch or volume of our speech. We sound like a robot. You want to avoid monotone delivery. It's more common with men. With women, sometimes their higher voice can come across a little shrill, or they tend to end their statements in a question. So they tend to end each statement with a question format. So these aren't necessarily gender specific, and I'm not trying to make this a gender discussion, just commonalities that we tend to see more with vocal quality issues between men and women. Phonation and pitch go together. That's the variety up and down of your presentation. Sometimes you want to speed it up, rate of speech, and sometimes you want to be more soft, so that's the pitch and volume. Bottom line is you want to have some variety in the delivery of your vocal presentation. So if we haven't done a lot of delivery, and those folks who take acting classes know that much of acting is your voice delivery. So practice your presentation being over the top a few times before you actually deliver it, because you might come across as being dull and nervous when it's really just your presentation style. So you can pump up the variety, the highs and the lows, and the talking faster and talking slower, and having some pauses, being louder and being softer. Add a little more dramatic spice to your presentation, and your audience will be more entertained by your vocal quality. In a room setting, another common mistake is that some students just talk very softly. I'm just a quiet, soft person. I always have been. I said, okay, quiet, soft person, give me your hand and let me put it in this vice grip and ratchet the vice grip, and you tell me how much this hurts. And at some point, as I'm cranking on that vice grip, they're going to get to a point like, ah, they're going to be screaming loudly. Everybody has the ability to speak loudly. We're just not oftentimes familiar with talking in a louder, more commanding voice. And the bigger the room, the bigger your voice needs to be. So a good loud voice projection gives the appearance of confidence. So don't be afraid to talk loudly. And a lack of a nice loud voice definitely gives the appearance of a lack of confidence, even if you're very comfortable. Now, some people, I've known some speakers that actually talk a little bit softer, but they have good room presence. If your content is really good and the audience is hanging on every word. So you don't want to be a master blaster super loud where it's actually too much. You want some variety in the delivery of your presentation. So know where your weak spots are. Am I monotone? Am I too quiet? Do I deliver everything at the same rate of speech, or do I just simply talk too fast and people can't follow me? Then I need to slow it down. So you'll know this by recording your presentation and getting some feedback from people. Have them listen to that and ask, what's my vocal quality like? And be willing to take that feedback. One of the things that usually wrecks the quality of our vocal delivery is the quality of our breathing as we're presenting. Something happens when we get up to present, our adrenaline spikes, and we get up there and we take a deep breath and we deliver our entire presentation in one breath. It all kind of comes out in a big rush, right? So you want to deliver your presentation slowly, calm, cool, collected. Breathe, relax. So this is much a practice in managing your anxiety and self-development, getting up and speaking in front of people, as it is presentation. I'm working on my confidence as a professional speaker, right? So getting out of our comfort zone is good. This is how we grow. So don't beat yourself up if you're nervous. Don't beat yourself up if your voice is a little quavery. You're being brave and courageous, and that's where all the growth is in life. So we have to be willing to push ourselves and get out of our comfort zone, especially with public speaking, because it's so important to your career growth. And I can tell you, friends, once you find your voice, particularly those of you who really don't like to do public speaking and you're really nervous and uncomfortable with it, but if you stick with it and you keep practicing and you join Toastmasters and you just keep working on this craft of public speaking, those of you who overcome this as a big hurdle typically end up being the best speakers because you've mastered something difficult, and you'll find your voice. And this finding your voice piece goes well beyond just business communications and even your business career. It's kind of finding your voice in life and kind of claiming your power. I know this kind of sounds self-help-ish, but it really starts here, right now, with learning how to own this piece about I'm gonna learn how to get up and do the right things for my career and tackle this fear and become an excellent public speaker. So breathing is central to that. Breathe. You can breathe all you want. It's free. Take lots of breathing. Calm yourself down and just keep going. Make a mistake, you don't need to apologize. Let me start over. Let me restate that point. You don't need to get up there and say, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. don't even go there. Now you've actually embedded that and reinforced that in your head. So just keep going. Just keep going. This is a key that you can do to help reduce your anxiety. Again, you're recording this, you know, at home, webcam, you got a shirt on, but you might be in your underwear. I don't know. The stakes are low here. So, but if you're doing this in a actual live setting, it really helps to go visit the setting in advance. Know where you're going to be standing. I mentioned this in earlier slides. Practice the entire presentation in the space. This is a very helpful tip for reducing your anxiety. So when you walk into that room and you're setting up your AV, or it's already set up for you, it's familiar ground. At least you know where you're going to stand and how people are going to be looking at you, and it's not all brand new where it feels kind of like this out-of-body experience. I've been here before and I know how this is going to flow. So dress appropriately, arrive early, make sure everything's working, have a backup plan, meaning handouts if necessary, and you'll do great. You know, during the presentation, your audience is going to pick up your energy. So if you're nervous, they're going to be nervous for you. If they're like, come on, you got this, and you're kind of struggling, they're going to start feeling nervous, and it's kind of like, you know, watching a car accident on the side of the road. So smile, have a good time, keep eye contact. Nobody's going to die, and you're learning a skill. So be loud, be proud, be aware of your audience, stay within your time limit. You might realize, oh my gosh, this is the first presentation where I'm not nervous, and you're so reveling in the moment and you're going on and on and on. You blow past your time limit because you got a ton of adrenaline going and you just want to tell the audience every single thing that you know. Don't do that. Stay within your time limit. Audience members hate it when presenters go over their time limit. And certainly me as an instructor know that if I keep my students in that room too long, they do not like it. So you got to stay within your time. After the presentation, again, you're recording a webcam live, so there is no quote after the presentation piece. But normally there would be. The Q&A, question and answer period, is just as important as the presentation itself. Why? Because if the audience is interested in your material, they're going to have questions. If you finish your presentation, all right, that concludes our presentation. We have 5 minutes for questions. Who has the first question? I'm raising my hand to show here's the behavior I want you to follow if you have a question. We have 5 minutes for questions. I'm aware of how much time we have left. Who has the first question? Priming the prompt for questions versus are there any questions? And the answer is no. Then you're done. You want to have questions. That questions dispel doubt that the audience might have about your presentation, and it helps get them further engaged and interested in your material. Again, you don't have to do this, but you will in other classes, and you will in your group presentations when you go for your upper division stuff. You should have some tactics for encouraging questions. You can hand out free stuff. All right, we got 5 minutes for questions, and we've got free Snickers bars for whoever asks a question. You get a Snicker bar. Who's got the first question? Whoop, hands go up. Anticipate the questions that you might have and who in your group is going to answer those questions. You handle questions about SDSU, and I'll handle questions about Cal State San Marcos. And David in our group, he's going to handle all the information on UCSD, et cetera, et cetera. Have tactics for encouraging questions. You can plant a question in the audience, believe it or not. You can ask your own audience a question. Well, I see there's no questions yet, so as you guys are kind of ruminating over the notes, one question we had as a group was, what's the guarantees of a 6-figure income after graduation? How do we know this research is accurate? Right? So you can actually ask your own question, and certainly handouts are something else you can use to help encourage questions. So Q&A, very important after the presentation. Team presentations. You're not doing one in this class, but it is a meat and potatoes component of most graduate business classes. And I used to do a lot of team presentations when I was at Jack in the Box as a product manager, my team, we would get together and present to the executive team, here's our new product idea, here's what our testing results are showing. We would like to proceed with building out inventory and starting to develop training materials, shoot some commercials, and take this product to market. And there'd be a team of people on my product team that I managed. So me as the product manager, and then we'd have somebody from purchasing and quality assurance and point of sale, management information systems, and the supply chain people and the training department and the marketing department. And I'd been in marketing and advertising for a while at that point, so I did a lot of presentations, but several people on my team didn't present much at all. They were a purchasing clerk in a department who really didn't go to school to be a presenter, and now they have to get up in front of the executive management team at Jack in the Box and give a presentation. So when you're delivering in a team presentation, it's actually harder than your own individual presentation because you're being evaluated on the collective whole, the show, if you will, of all of your group members. So you need to have more cohesion and discussion around who's going to cover what pieces. You need to practice as a group and be able to give frank feedback on each person's section. Transitions from one speaker to the next are crucial because that helps keep the flow of the presentation going. And I've seen lots of group presentations in my in-classroom versions of this business communication class. And when groups don't practice as a group, it always shows. They're disjointed, they're repeating information, they don't know the name of the next person they're presenting, and it's just not a good show. So those transitions really matter, so the audience always knows who's speaking at any given time. So again, you don't have to do that in this class. Congratulations for you. But you will be doing group presentations, and these are some things that you should plan on expecting when you do. You might be presenting to a distance presentation. Webcast or livecast, Facebook Live, social media, there's so much of this going on now. Pretty much all social media is moving towards video content and delivery. And it's certainly less expensive to do a video conference. The technology is getting better. Still not as good as being face-to-face with somebody, but we're seeing a lot more video conferencing, internet conferencing, tools like Zoom. There's tons of these online meeting platforms. So in that case, they're only seeing you, right? And there might be the ability to see several people at once, but you have to, some of the natural organic things that happen in a live presentation where somebody can interrupt and everybody else hits the brakes and there's kind of the sentiment of a quote feeling in the room, that stuff isn't picked up on so easily with distance presentations. So somebody usually has to moderate the presentation, so one person's presenting and when to stop and start people and have other people come in and speak takes a little bit more management than it does if you're doing it just in an organic live meeting situation. Your appearance and your lighting and your background, all of this stuff matters in a distance presentation. So you want to consider those things when you're recording your presentation. Take a look. What's the room environment? Do you have stuff hanging off the ceiling that you don't want me to see as part of your presentation? And make sure your lighting's good so you're not overlit or underlit, ideally. So just to add a couple more points to distance presentations, they don't work for everything. If you're going to lay somebody off or discuss to your audience that you're closing down their plant and it's going to lay off a bunch of people, you probably don't want to do this over video. You probably want to do that live. So live is always best. It's not always feasible, however. At Jack in the Box, when we train employees on how to make all our new food products that we were launching, sandwiches, and first step is toast this bun and then add this cheese and build it in this way and refrigerate it or nuke it or all these different pieces. When you think about what's the best way to deliver that type of training, it'd be live, right? Is it feasible to train 2,500 restaurants, each with 40 plus employees who work different schedules, live, how to make this new product? Not feasible, right? But we can shoot a video. So distance presentations certainly have a lot of value, but they're not for all things. In summary, each business presentation tends to have a three-part building block to it. There's an introduction where you get their attention, you build rapport. There's a body where you make your case, and there's a closing where you recap your main point and what you want the audience to walk away from. You should always identify what's the best delivery method. You want to make sure you have excellent vocals, you want to have well-built slides, and you want to practice that delivery as you're going to deliver it, meaning presenting it, to ensure it's an effective presentation. And you want to adapt your presentation to the audience that you're speaking to the location where you're presenting, and to the needs of different types of audiences. So with these simple points, you're well on your way to doing excellent work with your business presentations. Thanks for listening. You can go to this week's module for your assignments. Take care. Bye-bye.